purpose of this video is not to blame anybody or to make people look bad. What I'm trying to achieve here is to show the need for greater public awareness. There needs to be public awareness campaigns put in place, and they need to happen soon before there are more Maddies in this world. And to highlight this, I am going to use statements made by 3 separate individuals in relation to Maddie's case to show how, while each of these individuals on their own did question the arrangements with Jen Soto, Maddie and Stearns, they each found a way to, in their head, justify it as not their problem. And like I said, I'm not allocating blame, because I think this is something where people simply need to be given greater education in terms of mandatory reporting, in terms of when you need to report, and to feel that it is okay to report something, and that it's not putting them at any risk, and that it's not doing something wrong to do so. So I'm going to look at these different interviews, and I'm going to comment along the way, and then at the end I'm going to have a bit of a look at what is currently law in Florida, and also what I think needs to happen to make changes for the future to prevent this sort of thing happening again. The first audio comes from one of Jen's flatmates. So this is the flatmate who was best friends, or probably still is best friends, with Jen's sister. And this was a comment made during her interview with law enforcement.
At any point did you ever see Stefan alone with Maddie?
There was only one time where I had sent a message to Jen. I want to say I couldn't sleep. I was going to the gym and they were playing Atari. Like, I heard them playing Atari, and the door was like partially closed. And I texted Jen. I was like, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay with this, because, you know, I grew up in a very different household. Like, my dad doesn't play, so that's just the way I was raised. So I sent her a message. I was like, hey, are you good with this? Like, are you okay with her being in his room?
So this is the room upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, those were around the time that they were broken up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say.
And what did Jen say?
I mean, I can pull it up, but I'm pretty sure it was thank you, friend, you're good.
Now, this lady was concerned enough that she messaged Jen and said, are you okay with these guys being alone in his room together? And don't forget, Jen wasn't there at the time. And the door was partially open, so for her there were red flags. But she was given reassurance from Jen that it was fine. So she let it go. She wasn't comfortable with it. It went against what she believed was right. But she believed that the mother of the child had her best interests at heart, and that if Jen said it was okay, it must have been okay. She actually felt bad for questioning it, and she contacted her best friend, who is Jen's sister, just to let her know that she had interfered, so to speak. It's human nature to believe that a mother has their child's best interests at heart. So to be told by Jen, basically it's all good, and, you're fine, don't worry about it, essentially, then I can understand why she let it go. Were she perhaps more aware of options that were open to her and more aware of reasons for reporting these sort of things? Maybe she would have made contact with protective services. But I don't believe that she, with her own knowledge, her own beliefs, that she did intentionally do the wrong thing here. I think that when it is one isolated thing like this, it is easy for people to believe, I'm just overreacting, I just need to let it go, I shouldn't interfere with someone else's parenting. The next interview is with an individual who I don't think you could even say dated Stefan, because it was very brief. But she did have a brief relationship of sorts with Stefan. And so she was interviewed by police, and this is the information that she shared with them in terms of things that Stefan had disclosed to her. There are some really annoying dogs in the background of this. I apologise for that. There's not a lot I could do about it. But I feel that what she has to say here is important, so I did want to share it.
He made this comment once that because I asked him if he wanted to spend the night, and he said no, because if I don't get to the house, they won't go to sleep. And I was like, what do you mean? They won't? No, they don't sleep if I'm not there. So I'm like, we talk about it a little, and I'm like, but you're not with her anymore. And he goes, no, Maddie won't sleep because she sleeps with me and the mom in the bedroom. And I was like, but how old is she? Because I thought she was 12, and that's when he said, yeah, but he said something about her being autistic, but not being like
she's high functioning.
Doctor. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm like, but she's still 11. You're not the dad, and you shouldn't. I try because I have a bachelor's. I'm a teacher. I don't teach, and I try to, hey, not appropriate. And then he goes, no, she doesn't sleep if she's not cuddling with me.
Note how she says that Stefan tried to brush it off with the excuse of, oh, well, Maddie's autistic. And we know that's not the case. But he tried to brush it off with that way. And she actually came back at him and said, well, it's still not right. So she knew that it was not right. She had strong feelings about this. And that's something important to bear in mind listening to the rest of this interview.
And I was like, whoa, that's not. And then I asked him, hey, when she moves to the bed, then you can move to her bed and just sleep in her room. Like, we went over this. It's not something that I just disregarded, whatever. He had a way to play with words that I thought he was just dumb. I didn't think he was like a bad guy, like doing something to her.
It's human nature to want to rationalise things if they don't make sense, or if they go against something that we believe in and we don't want to rock the boat. Because I think that is what's happening here. I think she saw alarm bells, but she wanted to reassure herself that she was overreacting. So she convinced herself, well, he's just a dumb person. He's not a bad person, he's just a dumb person. And that rationalisation allowed her to accept these things that Stearns was telling her.
Another occasion, he said that he was upset because sometimes he'd go and take a shower, and then Jen would be in the bedroom, And then when he comes out of the shower, Maddie is sitting in bed with Jen, and then he'll be coming out naked, and Maddie will see him naked. And I'm like, but why? You know, it was the same thing. Why are you coming out of the shower naked? Why don't you just, you know, she's coming in the room, you know, she's supposed to, you guys then get dressed in the shower. Oh no, it's too hot. He will always, you know, and that was.
I am going to admit, when I heard her say that, it made me feel somewhat ill. A 12-year-old, 11-year-old child, however old Maddie was at the time, should not be experiencing that. And Jen should have been protecting her from that sort of thing. And while I've said at the start of this video, I don't want to be blaming people and making people look like villains, but I do struggle a bit with this particular interview because she does highlight several things that to her were red flags, and yet in her mind she is able to justify not taking any further action.
A lot. On another occasion that I forgot to tell the guys on the phone, he said that he sleeps in boxers, and then it was odd because he would wake up, and this is his words. I don't talk like this, but he'll wake up, and then he'll have to turn around because Maddie was like cuddling with him, and that's when I was like, okay, this is not right.
Now, while trying to avoid triggering people, the part there that was redacted was talking about him waking up and having a physical reaction, and then him having to turn around so that he was facing away from Maddie because of that physical reaction. To me, that is really, really majorly a red flag, and it concerns me that this is not something that a person would consider worthy of reporting. And like I said, no blame to her. I feel that the problem here, the breakdown here, is in public education and availability of reporting options. And I'll come back to that at the end of this video.
Did he ever actually disclose of...
No.
No.
The only thing is that they cuddle in bed, like she, because when he told me that she sleep with them in bed, my naive thinking was that it was Maddie, mom, and him. And I did talk to him. Okay, she sleeps, you know, and he's like, no, she needs to be like right, like next to me because she likes my body warmth. Which I'm sorry, but to me that was disgusting, you know.
Okay. Let me ask you this: why did you wait to say anything?
From last year to now, again, because I thought he was just being a dumb person that didn't know to distinguish, you know. Because even my dad never came out of the shower naked, but I just thought it was dumb. I did get grossed out by all these comments to the point that I couldn't even see him at work. I you know, like I wasn't very happy when he quit, you know.
Did you ever confront him about these?
I did.
Yes. What was his reaction to those?
While he was disclosing these things, I would be like, you know, I told him that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. I compared to my dad. He would twist it into this is like an innocent thing. I didn't mean her. Then he would change it into like I quickly cover, you know, and you know, like I feel bad because I could have said something, but sometimes I just thought if I say something and nothing is happening, plus I don't know their address, you know, like I'm gonna look like I'm just looking for trouble, and I feel awful because if I had said something, she would have been fine now maybe. But my reasoning was like, why is mom allowing, you know, this to happen? Because I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews, and I would never allow anything like this to happen, you know.
I think it's important to note here that while she is offering several reasons for her not acting, that these are most likely retrospective reasons. Perhaps at the time she just had that sense of not getting involved, but hadn't really thought it through in her head. But now that things have come to a head and she has to speak to law enforcement, she's now reflecting and thinking these are the reasons why I didn't do it. She probably has a lot of regret over it. So she's saying, I just thought he was dumb. She says, I was grossed out by it, but I thought he was dumb. Saying you were grossed out by something to me, that means a time for action. But I'll come back to that. And then him, basically her saying, he was a bit of a master with his words and he made it sound very innocent. So again, taking on what the possible perpetrator is saying to you and being convinced by them because they make it sound innocent. And here's the thing that comes up so often in so many cases. If I say something and nothing is happening, I don't want to look bad. It is a common theme that you hear over and over again in cases where things have not been right at home for a child and people have been too scared to speak out because they didn't want to cause offence. They didn't want to cause trouble if there was nothing going on. And I think this is one of the most important things that needs to change. It's better to cause offence and then say, look, I'm sorry, but I was just concerned, than to have regrets down the track. And the thing is, if you are that concerned, making a report to child protection is anonymous. You do have to give details, but by law they cannot share your details with anyone. But I'm going to come back to all that at the end of this video. She also says, I didn't know the address. So she's essentially saying, well, I couldn't really report it because I didn't know the address. You can still report these things if you don't know where someone lives. You can give the details that you know. These agencies have skilled staff who are trained to dig into things like this. And chances are, if you report something, there may already be a file. They may already have the details, such as an address. And the other thing which seems to come out so often is that she was wondering why the mum was allowing it. And I guess in her head there was the sense of, well, it must be okay because it's okay with the mother.
There was a bedroom that they were looking for somebody to rent. So I told him, why don't you rent that bedroom and then live there for now because it's going to be cheaper. And he said that Jen's bed is comfortable, and he wouldn't sleep anywhere. I even told him, like, when Maddie moves to her bed, then why don't you get up and move to Maddie's bed since she's there, then you don't have to be involving. Because I told him that you never know if she gets mad at you. In my naive thinking that he's a good guy, I don't know because we don't know, but in my naive thinking, if Jen gets mad at you for not wanting to be with her, she can go to the cops and say that you're doing things to her daughter. Like, that's what I told him. And he goes, well, she's not going to do that. And then I said, why don't you just move to Maddie's bed, sleep in her bedroom, and have them both sleep in the other bed. That way you are separated from all that. And he goes, no, Maddie's bed is very uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, you have a kid sleeping in an uncomfortable bed. That's all my reasoning was, I just wanted to get away from this guy at that point, and I was thinking that Jen would have Maddie's best interest and not letting anything happen to this kid. I'm sorry, I just don't know what else to tell you.
There's two factors at play here. One is that she was just so grossed out by Stearns that she just wanted him away from her, and she didn't want to be involved anyway in anything to do with his life. So that must have been a major deterrent for her in terms of, well, if she had decided to report it, then there, perhaps in her mind, there was still that connection with Stearns. And the other thing that you hear so often is this belief that the mother would have the child's best interests at heart. There's no need to get involved because I'm sure the mother knows what she's doing. She's going to have her child's best interests at heart. She's not going to serve up her child to some predator monster, which is sadly exactly what Jen did. So, yes, in retrospect, we can say that this lady made mistakes and that she should have spoken out. But it's a hard thing to do. And the things that she said here, the reasons she didn't do it, are the reasons that you hear over and over again in so many cases. She's not alone in this. This is what people believe. And this is why there needs to be greater public awareness. And I will talk more on that after I play the clips from Stephen Stearns' parents. So these are from a quite recent interview, and I'll put the link for the interview for the original video in the description section of this video.
I just wish there was. I just wish there was a way that we could have possibly known that there was a problem going on with Stefan. I had no idea.
Yeah.
The only thing that we knew that was wrong, and we addressed it immediately, was when we became aware of the co-sleeping arrangements. And they were here at our house. And at that point, I put my foot down and said, Madeline's not sleeping in the room with you. She's too old for that. And I said, you need to stop doing that at home too. And I talked to both Jen and to Stefan. And Jen says, well, she comes in at night. She gets scared. She comes in at night and climbs into bed, and I can't stop her. I said, does your door have a lock on it? She said, yes. I said, well, then you use the damn lock. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then to send your child off to sleep with a man in another room in a single bed together, who is not a biological relative, and even biological relatives can't be trusted. Right. I mean, seriously, how many people have you heard of in that situation with family members? So I just, I saw red when I heard that, and it's.
Did you, on that issue, did you? I know it sounds like you chastised them about sleeping in the same bed, but did you ever get a chance to sit down and talk to Stefan about that issue in more detail?
I didn't think I had to. I did not think I had to.
So she said here, essentially, that it was a red flag to her. She wasn't happy with it. She's mentioned that she's aware of the risks, even with biological relatives. She knows about that sort of stuff. And she's saying that she saw red over the arrangements. But she's essentially saying, well, you know, I didn't feel that I had to say anything more about it or do anything more about it. It's the common thing. This is the common thread in so many cases with so many children who are lost is people who feel that I didn't feel that I had to do anything more. I said my piece, that's my bit done. This is where changes need to happen. If something is not right, and in your gut you know it's not right, if it makes you see red, then you do need to do more. You do have to do more.
But
So
but Debbie did talk to Stefan and Madeline individually, and you
And
know,
together.
yeah, it didn't.
I
So
think it went in one ear and out the other because they didn't stop, but they never got to do it here. You know, I just, and and Madeline is the one that told me about the co-sleeping, not Stefan and not Jim. Madeline did. When she related, she said it was a funny story. She says, "Oh, I was in bed with Mom and Stefan, and when I woke up in the morning, my leg was draped over him." And she went, "Isn't that funny?" I said, "No, it's not. I don't find that funny."
yeah,
That's when I would have to talk with them, because to me, I'm sorry, that sent up a big red flag.
yeah. She
Never.
said that in a playful manner,
Yes. Yes.
but not in a, you wouldn't see that as kind of a cry for help.
I did not see it as a cry for help. I found it to be disturbing to me on levels. So.
And when you told Stefan you shouldn't be co-sleeping with Madeline, he, as far as you could tell, he heard you. He said, okay.
He heard me. He heard me. He and Jen both says, well, but she wants to be with us. And yeah. I knew no matter what I said to him, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway.
Right.
It was very obvious to me that they were not listening. They heard, but they're not comprehending, and they're not going to change.
Of the 3 interviews, this one is the one that concerns me the most. The one where I think these people could have put a stop to things. Now, she says, I said my piece to them, and I knew that they're not going to change. And I guess in her head that was the justification. I did what I needed to do, but it was up to them and they chose not to make a change. But she talks about red flags. She actually refers to it as a big red flag. And she says, I saw it as being disturbing on so many levels, or disturbing to me on levels. So in this interview, she is conveying how uncomfortable she was with it. And she is saying in relation to it that, this kind of thing puts children at risk. And she is critical of Jen for sending her daughter upstairs to sleep with a man that wasn't even related to the child. But she didn't take it any further. Now, I can understand that when it's family, that makes it even more awkward, because it did involve her son. But she's made it clear from the get-go that she never liked Jennifer Soto. So she could have justified it in her head as, I'm reporting Jen, not I'm reporting my son. And perhaps had she taken time, she would have thought, well, this is going to protect my son. And it's easy to say all this in retrospect, because we can look back in hindsight and say, these 3 people all saw significant red flags, but they didn't act on them. They decided it wasn't their place to speak up. But here's the thing. In Florida, everybody is considered a mandatory reporter. It is law. Any person who knows or has reasonable cause to suspect that a child is abused, abandoned or neglected by a parent, legal custodian, caregiver or other person responsible for the child's welfare is a mandatory reporter per section 39.2011A Florida statutes. Now maybe that sounds a bit scary to someone when you suspect that there's something not right, but you're afraid of the fallout from reporting it. Here's the thing. There are laws to protect people. So specifically here, the Department of Children and Families may not release the name of or other identifying information with respect to any person reporting child abuse, abandonment or neglect to any person other than employees of the department responsible for the Child Protective Services, Central Abuse Hotline, Law Enforcement, the Child Protection Team or appropriate state attorney without written consent of the person reporting. So in a nutshell, if you are going to contact Protective Services to say that you have concerns over a child, then you do have to give your identifying information. But they cannot disclose that. And they cannot disclose anything that may make it possible for the family that they're investigating to actually identify who made the report. So they're not going to say specifically someone reported to us that they saw your daughter in a bedroom with a mostly closed door with this adult. They will approach it in a way that does not identify where the information came from. And that's what they're trained to do. They're not going to dump people in it. There's far too much risk involved. And of course, if people think they're going to be dumped in it, they're not going to report. So there is that other obligation there. Organisations know that they have to do the right thing for all people involved. So I can understand people being afraid of reporting and afraid of looking like a troublemaker. But the thing is, when you report, the only people that are going to know that you did it is you and the organisation that you've reported them to. And it's easy to turn around and say, well, I didn't think it was significant because I didn't see any actual concrete evidence of abuse or concrete evidence of a neglect. But this paragraph here, I think, is significant in Maddie's case. Another frequently used standard is being required to report in situations in which the reporter has knowledge of or observes a child being subjected to conditions that would reasonably result in harm to the child. In other words, if you are aware that a mother is allowing her child to sleep in a bed with a 37-year-old man, that is a condition that could result in harm to that child. A reasonable person could conclude that there is a risk of harm for that child. So it is something that should have been reported. Like I said, I'm not trying to shame people here. I'm not trying to blame people here. I'm trying to point out that there are laws, there are things in place that should have protected Maddie. But there's a breakdown in the system here. Okay, and basically here it's telling you you can be prosecuted if you fail to report child abuse. And yes, putting a child in a situation where she could be harmed is considered under Florida law as child abuse. So technically all those three people could in fact be prosecuted. They won't be, and they don't deserve to be, in my opinion. They made a mistake based on lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of procedures. And here's what I believe needs to happen. The problem here is not with people finding excuses not to report things when they see red flags. The problem is a lack of public education, a lack of knowledge. Perhaps had those people known that by reporting they would be protected, they would be kept anonymous, they would have felt more comfortable with coming forward. Perhaps had they been made aware of what is considered under law to be neglect or abuse, they would have realised that what they were seeing was something that should have been reported. Perhaps had all the information to do with child protection been more readily available to these people, then they would have come forward and made a report. And the thing is, you may believe that you only have this small snippet of information and that it is a red flag for you, but you're not sure that it's enough information to really be going to authorities with. And this is why I called this video Maddie's Mosaic. Because had each of these people contacted authorities and said, there's just this one thing that concerns me, then a file would have been opened on Maddie, and any additional reports would have been added to that file, so that a bigger picture could have been created. That little bit of information that a person has about a situation with a child may seem small to them, and they may think, well, I'm just going to look like a troublemaker, and I don't think that protective services are going to act on just this one thing. But you don't know what other information is out there with regards to that child. What if 20 people had been seeing red flags with Maddie, and they all thought these are all tiny, insignificant things, so we're not going to report them because on their own they're not that significant? We'd still be where we are today. But on the flip side, if people had seen things and reported them, perhaps there could have been an investigation before things came to a head. So I think the lesson in this, and something that I think needs to be pushed for the sake of children in the future, so there aren't more Maddies. There needs to be greater public awareness of what is considered neglect, what is considered abuse. There needs to be perhaps awareness that it is mandatory in Florida to report these things. There needs to be awareness that people can be prosecuted. And maybe there needs to be an instance where a person is prosecuted for not reporting something that they were aware of, because there's nothing that raises awareness more than a court case. It's too late for things to be done to save Maddie, but greater public awareness campaigns, things can be done to try and make a change for the better, so that in future people are willing to step up and say this is not right, and go that extra mile and actually make contact with the right authorities to give them notification of something that to them is a red flag. Because like I said, perhaps one incident may not seem significant enough to you to report. But if it is something that does cause you concern, that should be enough. Because there may be more people seeing similar things. And that mosaic could create a picture that could save a child's life.